Hi, I'm Vincent and I'm... One second. That's better. Hi, I'm Vincent and I'm a product design engineer. This is a $1,000 top-of-the-line stainless steel stand mixer. And this is a $49 stand mixer I got at Walmart. I'm gonna be testing them out, seeing how they're similar, how they're different, and breaking down why they're designed the way they are. This is tried and tested stand mixers. First, I'll be making some pizza dough. This will help me see how well each mixer's dough hook mixes and kneads ingredients. I'm gonna start by adding in sugar, salt, and flour, mixing them up at a low speed, pouring in a yeast and water mixture and some olive oil. Next, I'm gonna set them to medium speed and let them do their thing for about 10 minutes. With both mixers, the ingredients start out all over the place. But as time goes on, the dough hooks combine them into single masses. In the Wolf, the dough is 100% getting kneaded, being pushed from one end, folded from another, and being thrown all over the bowl. However, in the Nurxiovo, after a while, the dough just started accumulating on the hook. Since it stayed in a clump and wasn't hitting the walls, there were definitely parts of the dough that weren't getting kneaded. Proper kneading promotes optimal gluten development. Gluten makes sure that the dough will be nice and chewy and have the right texture. During kneading, the yeast in the mixture releases carbon dioxide, which is caught in the dough, causing it to rise. When dough isn't kneaded enough, it won't have as much elasticity. This means that it won't catch as much CO2, leading to a more dense result. Okay, let's take a look at the doughs. The Wolf's dough feels pretty good. It's got a smooth texture and feels pretty elastic. The Nurxiovo's dough is smooth, but it's a bit stickier. It's not quite as elastic as the Wolf. You could actually tell how well the Wolf was working by how much it was shaking during the kneading process. This is because the weight of the dough was moving between the bowl and the hook, shaking everything up. The Nurxiovo machine was more stable because there wasn't this weight being thrown around. This difference comes down to the design of the dough hooks. The Nurxiovo hook is much smaller and has a single curved area, whereas the Wolf hook is twice as long and spirals down with multiple curves. The Wolf hook is also positioned closer to the bowl, allowing for that dough transfer between the hook and the bowl. The Nurxiovo has a large gap between the hook and the bowl. Because of this, there's a greater chance for the dough to stick the way it did. In the end, I don't think the Nurxiovo did what it was supposed to do. Instead of being kneaded thoroughly, the dough was mostly just sliding around on the hook. The Wolf kneads as well as a human can by hand, but does it faster and without the mess. The Wolf did everything it was supposed to. Next up, meringues. This test will show how these whisk attachments can blend and incorporate air into ingredients. Ultimately, I'm hoping for a meringue that has good structure and glossy, stiff peaks. I'll start by putting egg whites and cream of tartar into the mixers. Then I'll set them both to medium speeds and let them do their thing for about 3 minutes until they get frothy. Next, I'm gonna slowly add in sugar, then whisk until the meringue gets glossy and ideally holds stiff peaks. During this step, the sugar provides additional strength to the mixture, which allows the foam from before to become the signature glossy, stiff peaks meringues are known for. Let's check these out. The Wolf meringue is definitely glossy, but I would say it has more soft peaks than stiff peaks. The Nurxiovo, on the other hand, made a perfect meringue. Look at this stiff peak. It's glossy, it's thick, and it has perfect structure. I think these results come down to how the design of the whisk interacts with the shape of the bowl. The Nurxiovo has a smaller diameter bowl, which means more of the ingredients are situated tightly at the bottom. The whisk has a circular cross section throughout, which means it has great coverage inside the area of the bowl. The Wolf's bowl is larger and has a wider base. This means that the ingredients are more spread out and the whisking process is less efficient. This whisk has more of an oval shape, which means that it offers less coverage inside the area of this bowl. As it spins, there are more areas that just aren't being touched. Additionally, if we made a larger volume of meringue, I think the results could have improved. This is because it looks like the Wolf is designed to work better with higher capacities. Overall, I think the Nurxiovo ultimately gave us better results. If you're a professional and you're making larger batches of meringue, then maybe the Wolf is for you. But if you're at home making smaller batches, then I think the Nurxiovo can suit you just fine. Next, I'll be making frosting. This will help me evaluate each mixer's paddle attachment and see how well each can mix and cream all the ingredients together. I'm ideally looking for the paddle to make a frosting that's airy, whipped, and has a smooth texture. I'm gonna start by adding the cream cheese and butter and beating at a medium-high speed for 1 minute. Before we started today, I used a tachometer to measure their RPMs. Medium-high for the Nurxiovo measured in at about 433 RPM, while it was about 454 RPM for the Wolf. So for medium-high, they are both relatively going at similar speeds. Next, I'll reduce their speeds to low, add some salt, and gradually beat in some powdered sugar. Then I'll increase the speed to high for about 2 minutes. Both are set at max speed now, but the tachometer shows that the Wolf is operating at a much higher speed. My guess is that the higher speeds means that more air is going to be incorporated into the frosting made by the Wolf stand mixer. Finally, I'll add in some food coloring. We got frosting. The Wolf's is definitely smooth, whipped, and pretty airy. The Nurxiovo's frosting is also smooth and whipped, but maybe not quite as airy as the Wolf's. I think this difference in aeration comes from the variation in max speeds. The max speed of the Wolf is about 350 RPM faster than the Nurxiovo. This allowed the Wolf to incorporate more air than the Nurxiovo in the same amount of time. When you turn on a mixer, the motor and gears inside the head begin to rotate the paddle in a circular motion while spinning it at the same time. As the frosting gets pushed back into the middle of the bowl, air gets trapped between the layers and incorporates into the mixture, making it light and fluffy. Also, the paddle design plays a role in this. Both these paddles have lines through them. As the paddle spins, the ingredients are forced to go through these, separating them back out so they can get reincorporated and mixed even more, while providing even more opportunities for air to get trapped inside. With any mixer, there's always going to be some space between the paddle and the bowl, which means not all the ingredients can get incorporated. For the Wolf, I did have to use a paddle to scrape down the frosting a few times. The Nurxiovo did a pretty good job of blending. I also used a paddle to scrape down at one point, but it was a lot less necessary and incorporated really well. For the Wolf, after adding the food coloring, it was clear that there was a lot that was not getting incorporated. With the Nurxiovo, you could see that overall it did a better job of incorporating the food color. These differences all come down to the individual bowl and paddle designs. The Wolf comes with a 7-quart capacity bowl with a very large and especially tall paddle attachment. Because the paddle's so tall, it creates a thin layer of ingredients that don't easily get incorporated back into the mixture. The Nurxiovo comes with a 6.5 quart bowl, but more importantly, its paddle attachment is much shorter than the Wolf's. This means that the ingredients stay lower in the bowl and have a better chance of getting incorporated into the mixture. You could really see how big of a difference this made while I was scraping down after adding the food color. Overall, these both made pretty solid frostings. Though the Wolf's was a bit airier, it did take a bit more work for me to get it there. If you're making a moderate amount of frosting, both of these do a great job, and I'm not sure if I can justify the much higher cost of the Wolf. Finally, I'll be grinding pork. This test will help me evaluate each mixer's meat grinding attachments. I should also note that the Nurxiovo came with this attachment, but for the Wolf, you have to spend an extra $150 on top of the $1,000 you've already spent. In front of me, I have cubes of pork that I'll be passing through the grinders. I've also chilled both meat grinders, which helps prevent the meat and the fat from becoming emulsified as it goes through. All right, let's grind some meat. So first, I'm gonna load up the top tray with the pork. For the Wolf, I'll set it to speed 3. For the Nurxiovo, I'm gonna set to speed to 2 and then start pushing the pork through. As the meat passes down through the hopper, it enters a chamber with a helical-shaped auger, which pushes it forward. As it moves forward, it goes through sharp blades that grind it up, then continues through circular dies that further break down and shape the meat. All of this is powered by the rotational motion of the motor. In terms of end results, both mixers did their job and we have pretty similar ground meat. The only differences I found were in terms of usability. The Wolf is a much taller machine, so it was kind of difficult to get the leverage that I needed to push the pork through the system. I really had to reach high and it was hard to maintain balance. The Nurxiovo is much more ergonomic because it's shorter and I was able to easily balance myself and pass meat through the grinder. However, the build quality of the Nurxiovo is noticeably worse than the Wolf. When pushing the meat through, you really have to exert a lot of force. I can feel the machine bending and flexing with every push. It really felt like it could break at any moment. The Wolf, on the other hand, super solid. This is a machine built to last. Taking a look at the end results, overall, these look pretty similar. You can see the specks of meat mixed with fat, and it's not all mushed together in one clump. Overall, both these gave great results, but I would be concerned with the longevity on the Nurxiovo. If you're looking to ground meat every once in a while, this is probably fine. But if you're looking for something that'll last a lifetime, then the Wolf is definitely the way to go. Is that worth over $1,000? That's for you to decide. While doing these tests, as an engineer, there are a few other things I couldn't help but notice. Bowl locking mechanism. The Nurxiovo bowl locks in by twisting it like a screw into the base. The Wolf has unique tracks in the base, which guide the bowl upward while locking it into the base. This seems cool, but it limits you on how much space you have to put ingredients and attachments in place. Attachment locking mechanism. The Nurxiovo has a standard spring-loaded pin mechanism that holds the attachment in place. The Wolf has a similar mechanism, but the spring is hidden inside. This makes it look more sleek, but a bit more difficult to put on the attachments. Mixer heads. Nurxiovo has a tilt head, which makes it really easy to put ingredients in and out. The Wolf has a fixed head, which means that you have to constantly move the bowl to get ingredients in place. Stability. The Wolf is a heavy machine that stands its ground on the table. The Nurxiovo is lightweight plastic and relies on suction cups. The Wolf will be able to handle most heavy-duty jobs that you throw at it. While in the Nurxiovo, I just don't know how much I trust the suction cups. In the end, you can get good results from from both of these machines. And that's really surprising considering the large price difference. If you're serious in the kitchen and want something that lasts a long time, you're probably better suited for something towards this end of the spectrum. But if you're more of a casual chef or just looking to experiment, this $50 machine could get the job done. Obviously, there are also many other options in the middle of the spectrum, so do your research and get what's right for you.